Hello, how are you? I hope you are all fine. Are you doing well? So let's start this today video. In this video, we talk about the Paul Castellano. Paul Castellano is the famous gangster in the world. Now we talk about the journey of Paul Castellano. Paul Castellano born as Castellano Paul Castellano on June 26, 1915 in Brooklyn, New York was one of the most powerful and well-known figures in history of the American Mafia. His life was filled with crime, power struggles, and ultimately a tragic downfall. This is the story of how Paul Castellano rose to the top of one of the biggest mafia family in New York and how his ambition led to his death. Paul Castellano grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a family already involved in the mafia. His parents were immigrants from Sicily and his father was a butcher who had ties to the underworld. Castellano dropped out of the school when he was just 16 years old and started working in his father's butcher shop. But he did not stay in the family business for long. Instead, he became involved in illegal activities like his relatives. Castellano was a cousin to Carlo Gambino, another well-known mafia figure. This figure connection would later help Castellano rise through the ranks of the Gambino crime family, one of the 5 families of the New York Mafia. As a young man, Castellano quickly made a name for himself in the world of organized crime. He started with small-time jobs like running numbers, which was a form of illegal gambling, but soon he was involved in a bigger criminal operation. By the 1940s, Castellano was deep involved in the mafia and was known for being a smart, calculating man who preferred making deals or violence. One of the key moments in his early criminal careers came in 1957. At the time, the mafia in New York was going through major changes, and a man named Albert Anastasia was in charge of the Gambino family. However, Anastasia was murdered in a barber shop and Carlo Gambino took over the family. Since Castellano was related to Gambino, he was given a high-ranking position in family. This was the beginning of Castellano's rise to power. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Paul Castellano continued to grow his influence within the Gambino crime family. Unlike many other mafia leaders, Castellano preferred to avoid violence whenever possible. He was more interested in making money and running the family like a business. He earned the nickname the Howard Hawes of the Mafia because he liked to keep a low profile and was interested in legitimate business ventures. One of the Castellano's most profitable business was his control over the meat industry in New York. Because of his family background in butchery, Castellano used his connection to dominate the meat supply in the city. He forced business to buy meat from companies he controlled, making millions of dollars in the process. By the 1970s, Castellano was one of the most wealthiest men in the mafia, but he wanted more. In 1976, Carlo Gambino, the boss of the Gambino crime family, passed away. Before his death, Gambino named Castellano as his successor. Even though many in the family believed another man, Neil, should have taken over, the decision created tension within the family. As the head of the Gambino crime family Paul Castellano controlled one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. The family was involved in a wide range of illegal activities including drug trafficking, extortion, gambling, and labor racketing. Under Castellino leadership, the Gambino family continued to make enormous amount of money, but his style of leadership was different from his procedures. Castellano was known for being a businessman rather than the traditional gangster. He did not like the idea of his family being involved in a drug trafficking, and he wanted to keep a distance from the street level criminal activities that many of his soldiers were involved in. This made him unpopular with some members of the family, especially those who worked closely with Delacroix, his underboss. One of the Castellano's biggest mistakes was distancing himself from the people who were eventually doing the dangerous work for the family. He lived in a large mansion in Staten Island, far away from the streets of Brooklyn where most of his soldiers operated. Castellano's lifestyle made him seem out of the touch with the realities of the mafia world, and many members of the family began to resent him. While Castellano was trying to run the Gambino family like a business, there was trouble brewing beneath the surface. One of them men who was unhappy with the Castellano leadership was John Gotti, a tough street gangster who had earned respect through his violent ways. Gotti was loyal to Anelio, who had been passed over for leadership when Castellano became boss. In 1985, Delacroix passed away, and this event marked the beginning of the end for Castellano. Without Delacroix to keep his loyal followers in check, Gotti and others began to plot against Castellano. They saw him as weak and out of touch with the mafia true nature. Gotti in particular wanted to take over the family and bring it back its roots as a street-level criminal organization. On December 16, 1985, Paul Castellano's reign as the head of the Gambino crime family came to a violent end. Castellano was scheduled to have dinner at a popular steakhouse in Manhattan called Spark Steakhouse. As he stepped out of his car to enter the restaurant, he was gunned down by a group of hitmen. He was shot several times and died on the sidewalk just outside by the restaurant. His driver and bodyguard Thomas Bellotti was also killed. The hit was ordered by John Gotti and who wanted to take over as the boss of the Gambino family. The assassination of Castellano shocked the world and marked one of the most infamous moments in mafia history. Gotti's brazen move to kill the boss in such a public setting showed that he was not afraid of the consequences and was willing to do whatever it took to seize power. After Paul Castellano's murder, John Gotti became the new bosses of Gambino crime family. Gotti, known as the Dapper Don from his flashy suits and charismatic personality, ruled the family with a combination of charm and violence. While Gotti's style was very different from Castellano, he quickly gained control of the family and became one of the most infamous mafia in history. Castellano's death also marked the end of an era in the mafia. He represented the old way of doing things, where mafia leaders stayed in the shadows and tried to avoid attention. Gotti, on the other hand, loved the limelight and became media sensation. Paul Castellano's life is a story of power, ambition, and ultimately betrayal. He was a man who rose to the top of the mafia through his intelligence and business skill. But his desire to run the Gambino family like a corporation made him enemies with his own organization. His refusal to adopt the changing times and his failure to connect with the street level members of his family ultimately led him to his downfall. Castellano murder marked a turning point in the history of the mafia in America. It showed that even the most powerful men in the underworld were not safe from betrayal. Today, Paul Castellano is remembered as one of the most significant figures in mafia history. A man who reached the peak of the power only to be brought down by his own organization. His life served as a reminder that in the world of organized crime, power is always fragile and betrayal can come from the least expected places. If you like this video, please like and share, and also subscribe the channel. Thank you. Take care.